It all started the third time they crossed my fence line, not with a shout, but with a piece of high-tech arrogance buzzing low over my pasture. They brought a drone, and I brought a 12-gauge named Bessie, my granddad's gun, old and heavy, and better at making a point than any lawyer's letter. That's the truth of it, the raw, Texas sun-scorched truth. See, people who didn't grow up here, they think this part of the state, just outside what they call the urban sprawl, is all dust and convenience. But out here, dust is history, and the fence line isn't a suggestion, it's a solemn vow. This land, the Ironwood Ranch, 300 acres of scrub oak, barbed wire, and pure, stubborn pride. It remembers. My great-grandpa bought it after the big war, held in a land trust since 1948, back when a man's word was collateral and a handshake was the deed. It ain't commercial, ain't residential, and sure as hell ain't under any damn homeowners association, or Arbor Creek Community Covenant, as they slickly called themselves. My name is Caleb Stone. I've been working this dirt since I was tall enough to reach the gas tank on the old Ford tractor. I never sold out, though the money got big enough to tempt a lesser man. Didn't sell because I don't much care for crowds, never have. I prefer cows. Cows don't lie, they don't gossip, and they sure don't show up at your gate smiling with a clipboard and a plan to make your life harmonious. My 3 rules are simple: boundaries, honesty, and work. When somebody violates one, you fix it. When they violate all 3, you declare war. I remember that morning clear as a bell, the air sweet with cut hay and the bite of diesel. I was patching wire on the south line when I saw them. A couple, fresh out of a glossy lifestyle magazine, standing at my gate like they'd just teleported from a wine mixer. Clean boots, white teeth, and not a drop of honest sweat between them. The woman, Ms. Vivian Thorne, clutched a clipboard like it was a scepter. "Mr. Stone," she chirped, her voice too high, like a hungry mosquito. "We're with the Arbor Creek Welcome Committee, just checking in on our adjacent neighbors." I just leaned on the fence post and wiped the dust off my hands, taking my time. Neighbors? That word means something sacred out here, but the way she used it, it sounded like an application process. I didn't speak, just let the silence sit there and start to itch. She finally cleared her throat. "We're holding our first community review next week. We'd love your input, especially on, livestock visibility and the uniformity of surrounding properties. Some residents," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "have mentioned concerns about the agricultural aesthetic impacting property value alignment." I gave her a slow nod, the kind that lets the words sink in and curdle. "Livestock visibility? Ma'am, I have cattle, not garden gnomes. And my land, this ground right here, it ain't under your Arbor Creek. It's private property, held in trust since before your development was a twinkle in a realtor's eye." Her smile didn't falter, it just became sharper, more practiced. "Well, technically the plat shows your acreage as adjunct to our protective covenant area. We simply want to ensure everything remains cohesive and harmonious. Adjunct ain't included." I countered, feeling the slow burn start in my gut. "I don't pay your dues, I don't follow your rules, and I sure as hell don't need a committee to tell me what color my barn ought to be. We're plenty harmonious on this side of the fence." They left with a few fake pleasantries, but as they drove away, the man glanced back and snapped a quick picture of my barn. A big, beautiful red structure my daddy painted with his own 2 hands. That was the first photo, and I knew, deep down, it wouldn't be the last. The visits became a pattern. Different faces, same polite smiles, always with the clipboard, always using words like shared expectations and visual alignment. They didn't like the barbed wire, they didn't like the color of my tractor, and they certainly didn't like the sight of honest-to-God longhorns grazing where their pristine subdivision met my reality. I tried to be polite at first. I even pulled out the trust deed, paper so old it smelled like my grandpa's workshop, and held it up to one woman's nose. She just glanced away. "The spirit of the law is important too, Mr. Stone," she sniffed. "The spirit of the law don't sign property lines," I shot back. That was the last time I offered politeness. Then came the buzzing. The first drone was a cheap one, noisy, hovering right over my hay barn, its camera blinking red like a curious insect. I took a handful of gravel, a Stone family tradition, I suppose, and chucked it. Clink. It wobbled and retreated south like a scolded dog. But 3 days later, a newer, quieter one appeared. They'd learned, so I learned faster. That weekend, I drove 40 miles and paid cash for 4 high-quality trail cameras and a couple of audio recorders. I hid them in birdhouses, inside an old oil drum by the gate, and in a feed bucket that had seen better days. If they were going to play spy games, I was going to let them hang themselves on their own curiosity. The footage came in a week later, glowing on my kitchen table laptop, and it was worse than I thought. 2 board members, whispering by the fence at midnight. The microphone caught just enough. If we file under safety, animal control has to respond, the man in a pressed polo said. Exactly. The woman, not Vivian, a different one, with sharp tortoiseshell glasses, replied. We claim the livestock are undernourished. Cite the local ordinance, and the county will do the rest. It's a clean way in. I paused the video. Let that sentence hang there in the dark. They weren't just nosy neighbors. They were orchestrating a malicious scheme. I fast-forwarded. Another guy was measuring my fence posts, muttering about non-conforming structures. I started labeling every clip, timestamps, names, license plates. I didn't share it yet. You don't show your hand when the dealer is still stacking the deck. The real shift came when Mr. Garrett Hayes showed up. He looked expensive, crisp denim, boots that had never seen mud, posing as an investment broker from a firm called Cypress Peak Acquisitions. He leaned on the hood of his silver SUV, giving me the practiced, friendly but superior salesman smile. Mr. Stone, he called, sliding a folder across the top of my fence. I'm not with the HOA. In fact, I've had my own run-ins with those city folks playing cowboy. But I've got an above-market offer for you. No pressure, but this area is changing fast. You're sitting on a gold mine. The number he flashed was enough to make a poor man blink. I put down my wrench, a beautiful vintage tool, and straightened up, meeting his eyes. You do this often, Garrett? Approach folks with offers they didn't ask for, out by fences you're not supposed to be near. He chuckled, the easy, dismissive sound that salesmen use when they think they've won. Only when it's worth it. Well, this ain't, I said, pointing down the dusty county road. Drive that way until you stop seeing barbed wire. Then keep going. He folded the folder without argument and drove off. And that, the lack of argument, was what stuck with me. People like that don't leave empty-handed unless they already got what they came for. Sure enough, the trail cam footage from 2 nights prior showed that same silver SUV parked half a mile down the road. Garrett Hayes was seen taking a manila folder from the tortoiseshell glasses woman and handing her a check. So much for not with the HOA. It was a coordinated pressure play. Plan A, harass the farmer. Plan B, offer him money to make him complicit. My coffee went cold, but the rage was warm enough. They weren't just annoying, they were organized. This wasn't a neighborhood squabble, it was a hostile takeover. Then the smiles ran out, and the real damage started. First, a letter claiming I was violating air quality standards due to livestock odor. I tossed it onto the burn pile. Then came the county trucks, animal welfare, then environmental quality, all triggered by anonymous complaints, poking around my healthy cattle, taking photos of everything. Then they got mean. One night, I found 2 industrial garbage bags full of insulation and broken drywall dumped right by my south gate. The next morning, code enforcement showed up about an unauthorized dump site. I just pointed to the birdhouse camera above the gate. I can pull the footage, I told the officer. You'll see a white van toss that junk right over my fence at 3:42 a.m. He didn't press the issue. Death by paperwork. That was their game. But the night they cut the chain on my east gate and let a dozen head of cattle loose on the county road, that was the line. For hours of chaos in the dark, using a flashlight and a bucket of range cubes to herd my family back home, exhaustion settled into something cold and hard. 2 days later, I found both rear tires on the tractor slashed deep with a knife. The screen of my irrigation control tablet was shattered. Someone had been close enough to smell the oil on my tools. I stood there, listening to the silence, and that heavy, familiar anger started to crawl up my spine. The kind you think you outgrow, but never do. I went inside, pulled Bessie from the cabinet, and loaded her slow, 1 shell at a time, the way my granddad taught me when respect still mattered. I sat on the porch, thinking about driving straight down to Vivian Thorne's perfect little porch, but a deeper voice told me to wait. I was done playing defense. Sheriff Clay Avery found me the next morning, standing on the porch, looking, as he put it, like I was about to declare war. He sighed. brushing dirt off his graying jeans. "You might want to sit down, Caleb." I stayed standing. He pulled a small flash drive wrapped in a note from his coat pocket. We had a leak. One of the HOA guys, new to the area, couldn't stomach it. He gave us this recording. "It's bad, Caleb." Vivian and Garrett, caught on tape, talking about a plan to contaminate your main pond with synthetic fertilizer. Enough to trigger a massive EPA alert. They figured if the land looks toxic, the county or the feds step in, seize it, or zone it out from under you. I just stared at the little plastic drive in my hand. "It felt heavier than steel," she said. Avery continued, his voice low and serious. "If we can't make him sell, we'll make it impossible for him to stay." "It's all right there." I finally exhaled and sat down on the steps. "She's trying to break me, Clay. Turn my land into a liability. And she's crossed the line from HOA nonsense into criminal conspiracy," he confirmed. "We've looped in the DA. Now, Jed," he looked me square in the eye, "we stop playing defense." He gave me the number of a lawyer in Austin, Miss Clara Vance, a land case specialist with a mean streak. I called Clara Vance that afternoon. She had a steady, firm voice. When I finished recounting the footage, the vandalism, the buyout attempt, and the pond contamination plan, there was a long pause. "Mr. Stone," she said finally, "this isn't harassment. This is organized coercion. This puts the Arbor Creek Covenant in a courtroom for years." "I like the sound of that," I said. "So what do? We go on offense," she declared. "Civil, environmental, criminal. We file with the EPA, the county, and the State Land Commission. And we make sure every single one of those smiling bullies has to answer under oath." But I wasn't just going to wait for the paperwork. Brian Lee had given me a different idea, a taste of their own psychological warfare. I borrowed my buddy's heavy yellow backhoe and spent the better part of 2 days digging. 6 deep, clean, straight trenches right near the south fence line where Arbor Creek had the clearest view. I didn't post signs. I didn't answer calls. I just dug, making sure the dirt piles looked intentional, like I was building something big. Maybe a new foundation, maybe a moat. Let them burn calories guessing. It worked like a charm. Monday morning, the call started. Arbor Creek was buzzing. Stone is building a fortress. Stone is prepping for commercial development. Stone is digging illegal septic lines. By Tuesday, a little HOA grunt, one of Vivian's regular fence measurers, came marching up my drive. "Mr. Stone, we've received reports of unauthorized excavation work that could pose a community safety hazard." I pulled out a folder. Inside, county-approved documents from 1972 and a fresh permit I'd filed just 3 days prior through the Agricultural Board. "Runoff control trenches," I said, pointing to the stamp. "State-approved. Helps with erosion. You folks always say you care about the environment, right?" He blinked, common sense slapping him across the face, and backed away, muttering. That night, the cameras caught the real show. The fence measurer, flashlight in hand, crept up to the trenches, trying to peek into the pits. His boot slid. He went down, waist deep into the freshly dug Texas gumbo, cursing loud enough to wake the cows. He scrambled out, covered in mud, limping back to his car. I pulled the footage, labeled it Trespassed 14, and made 3 copies. Let them try to spin that in court. The tide had finally turned. They'd spent months trying to paint me as the problem. Now, they were the ones sweating, wondering what I might do next. Nothing rattles a bully more than realizing the man they picked a fight with has patience, paperwork, and a backhoe. By late fall, the air was crisp, and the fight had changed shape. Clara called one morning. "Caleb, we're not the only ones." 2 families inside Arbor Creek, the Millers and the DeVises, came forward after seeing the article Rachel Ortega published. Rachel was a property rights reporter who had picked up my story. They bought their homes under the promise that your land was under acquisition and slated for a nature corridor. They're furious and ready to testify. I felt a genuine smile tug at my face. I hadn't been standing alone on this dirt, after all. Avery stopped by later. "The DA's office is looking into Vivian's financials. Turns out HOA funds were funneled through Cypress Peak Acquisitions, Garrett Hayes' company. They're all tied up, Caleb. Guess that snake finally showed its tail?" I replied. A week later, we had our meeting, me, Clara, Avery, Rachel, and Garrett Hayes. Garrett looked like a man who had finally slept through the night, but was still paying the price for his sins. He brought a flash drive full of emails and text messages showing direct coordination between Vivian and the realtor who defrauded the Millers and the DeVises. Money transfers, false claims, even instructions on how to frame me as a hostile agricultural element. Clara almost whistled. This isn't a lawsuit, Caleb. This is a reckoning. We laid it all out. My video, their fraudulent contracts, Avery's recording of the poisoning plot, and Garrett's paper trail. It was enough evidence to build a barn on. The day of the trial came. Downtown Austin, marble and flags. I wore a suit that felt like it belonged to another man. Clara was calm as a surgeon. Across the aisle sat Vivian Thorne, perfect posture, makeup like armor, beside a lawyer who smiled the way snakes do. Clara opened with the timeline. Every visit, every fake complaint, the drone footage, the trespass logs. Then the audio played. If we can't make him sell, we'll make it impossible for him to stay. The judge leaned forward. Garrett Hayes testified next, looking humble, describing how he was hired to pose as an investor, Plan B. He laid out the payments, the shell company, the emails. The jury listened, watching the dominoes fall. But then, the final, cinematic twist. Around noon, Avery's phone buzzed. He leaned over, whispering to Clara, then to me. Caleb, we've got movement at Ironwood. Security feed shows a truck and 2 men near your pond. My blood ran cold. They were trying to destroy the evidence. Clara's eyes flashed. Avery, can your deputies handle it? He nodded, already texting. They're en route. Let them hang themselves, Caleb. You've already set the trap. Out at the ranch, Deputy Lydia Ruiz and 2 officers rolled up just as the men, registered to Cypress Peak Acquisitions, were hauling heavy bags of fertilizer toward the water. They froze under the floodlights. Lydia stepped out, hand on her belt. Afternoon, gentlemen. You got a permit for that. The cameras were rolling. By the time Avery got the confirmation text, Clara was already questioning Garrett again. Mr. Hayes, you named the company earlier. Cypress Peak. Can you confirm who authorized the payment for this work? He nodded. Vivian Thorne. Vivian's face drained of color so fast you'd think someone pulled the plug. The EPA agents took the stand next, confirming that the planned contamination would have triggered an automatic federal land seizure. Vivian Thorne had tried to weaponize the law to steal what she couldn't buy. The verdict came down that afternoon. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit property sabotage, forgery, and organized harassment. The judge's gavel hit the block with a crack that felt like thunder. 6 years in state prison. Permanent ban from holding any HOA or corporate office. The war was over, but I had one more stop to make. That evening, I drove back to Ironwood. Lydia Ruiz was waiting by the gate, a faint grin on her face. Caught them red-handed, Mr. Stone. Got it all on camera. They even admitted who sent them. I nodded, looking out over the clear, still water of the pond. Everything they tried to poison was still breathing. The Arbor Creek Community Covenant was officially dissolved 2 months later. Assets frozen. Turns out mine wasn't the only ranch they tried to rope in. Rachel Ortega called it the reckoning. My story hit every paper from Houston to Amarillo. Letters started showing up in my mailbox, handwritten ones from as far as Oregon and Maine. One man mailed me a handmade belt buckle, private land, public spine. I'd become the mascot for stubbornness. Garrett Hayes stopped by the next week. He looked like a man who had finally slept through the night. I'm done with that world, he said. Developers, HOA deals, all of it. You hiring, Caleb? I told him, sure, long as you don't mind early mornings and honest sweat. He smiled. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Funny thing about redemption, sometimes it just needs an extra pair of hands and a clean start. The barn's been repainted. The Millers and the DeVises came over one weekend and helped with the trim, and the Ojedas, the DeVises, brought pie. We didn't talk about lawsuits, just work, weather, and good fences. That was enough. Rachel came by for a final interview. We sat on the porch. So what now, Caleb? She asked. Same as before, I said, watching a hawk ride a thermal over the fields. Feed the animals. Fix what breaks. Keep my gates locked. She smiled. You think it's over? Not for them, I said. There's 100 more HOAs out there thinking they're above the dirt they're standing on. But maybe next time, they'll think twice. I made a new sign for my front gate, bolted right next to the old Ironwood brand. It's simple, big, and honest. If you're from the Covenant, turn around. We remember you. We didn't like you. People talk about freedom like it's a big, complicated word. It's not. It's simple. It's the right to live on your own dirt without someone else trying to draw on it. And as long as I've got breath in my lungs, that line in the dirt stays mine. That's my legacy, I guess. Not fame, not headlines, just a piece of Texas that still remembers who it belongs to. The Ironwood Ranch is quiet now. The cattle are fat and lazy. The fences are straight again. But every time I walk that south line, I remember, a fence doesn't divide, it defines. It says, this part's mine to care for. And that's not greed. That's duty. My story is just one small fight in 1,000 other communities where boundaries are being tested. If you've ever had to draw a line in the sand, whether it's with a neighbor, an HOA, or some piece of bureaucratic nonsense, I want to hear about it. What did you do? Did you use the law? Or did you use Bessie? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next time someone tries to mess with Texas. Thanks for listening.